Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, the Albert Einstein College of Medicine has been implementing the Bronx Healthy Start Partnership, which aims to reduce racial and ethnic disparities in birth outcomes in the Bronx. A professor of family and social medicine at Albert Einstein College of Medicine gives us all the details. Then, Local Law 18 is a new law in NYC that will put restriction on short-term rentals. The chair of WSNA's Illegal Hotel Committee shares more on why illegal hotels hurt tenants and tourists. After that, we take a look back at an interview with Principal Success Advisor at Bottom Line, who discussed their mission to help support equity in higher education and income, student debt, and increasing graduation rates among lower-income students. And finally, Willow follows an elected alt-world observer known as Griot in her world as she ascends to power in an Afrocentric vampiric world on the verge of collapse. The showrunner and writer of Willow, House of Griot, shares more details about this exciting short film. So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello everyone, I'm Kibin Alleyne, and today is Tuesday, September 26th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Health professionals across the country acknowledge September as Infant Mortality Awareness Month. According to the CDC, infant mortality rates are an important marker of the overall health of society. Joining me to discuss infant mortality and preventative action is Professor of Family and Social Medicine at Albert Einstein College of Medicine and Project Co-Director for Bronx Healthy Start Partnership, Dr. Hal Strelnick. Doctor, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, just for those who may not be aware, could you just explain what infant mortality is and, what does that name actually mean?
Infant mortality is defined as the death of a born child during the first year of life. And that's whether it occurs in the first hours of life or it occurs just before they turn one.
Now, what are the main causes of infant mortality?
Well, the most prominent cause are birth defects, which don't allow the child to survive. The next most common is when a baby is born early and has not had the full time to grow in the womb, and what people call preemies or prematurity, and low birth weight. And the body of the infant hasn't matured adequately to be able to survive outside the mother's womb. And that often occurs if the baby is born before the 40 weeks of a full term pregnancy.
Now, I also want to talk about sudden infant death syndrome. I know this is, if you've taken any college course regarding to like developmental health or anything like that, this was like a term I would hear a lot. Can you just explain like what that is? And why is it called sudden infant death syndrome? I think when we hear sudden, we think of certain things. So can you just kind of expand on that for me?
So if an infant dies without any apparent cause, the term is often used of sudden infant death. Now, you can't make that determination just if you find the infant has stopped breathing and has lost its life. You need to investigate all the potential causes that might have occurred to lead to that. And if that investigation, sometimes a child will get caught in bedclothing and it will lead to inadvertent suffocation. And if that's the case, that would not be considered sudden infant death. But if there can be no explanation, that is termed sudden infant death. The important ways of preventing that is how you help the baby go to sleep, how you keep the environment around where they sleep, and in particular, avoiding having any member of the household smoking in the same space, so the entire apartment, because one of the higher risk factors is secondhand smoke that can occur and lead to this. And all of this is because of the lack of maturity of the brain and the infant's lungs to be able to continue doing what we all do, with regular frequency, is, breathing and staying alert.
So just to clarify, just because when I've heard of this term, people would like kind of associate it with like what you mentioned, like maybe having too many things in the crib that could maybe block breathing. That doesn't count as sudden infant death syndrome, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so sudden infant death syndrome is basically just for whatever reason the baby on its own stopped breathing.
That's correct. But as I alluded to, the environment, the infant may have been exposed to secondhand smoke, and that is a potential contributor. And we find that there's a higher rate of infant death in households where there are smokers.
Now, I want to talk about preventative or like basically are any of these causes preventable. I know that we only went over a few. I know when I did some research, it was a little bit of a longer list of certain things that could contribute to infant mortality. And this may be scary to a lot of parents, but what are some things, or are any of these preventable?
So the prevention really starts with the woman's health when she conceives. And that is being in the best of health is important. And things like anemia, which can often happen to an otherwise healthy woman who might be interested in the timing right for that family to have a child. Making sure that anemia is taken care of, because the reduction of the blood means that the infant, once it's in the womb, does not get the same kind of nourishment that it needs. The other important things is to assure that once a woman knows she's pregnant, that she should be sure to begin prenatal care and supplements with vitamins, particularly the prenatal vitamins, which are necessary to have all of the vitamins that are necessary, rather than the one-a-day vitamins that you would get over the counter, and following the growth and development of the infant and protecting against problems like high blood pressure, which can be exacerbated during the pregnancy and do harm by preventing the blood flow to the infant and impair their growth. And all of this is, you want the infant to do as much growing inside the womb before the baby is delivered, and to be as mature as possible. And the prenatal care is important for that.
Now, I want to know, could genetics be a variable in regards to infant mortality, especially like when we look at certain demographics that are probably a little bit more affected, which we will get into. Could genetics be a variable at all when it comes to infant mortality?
Well, as I said before, that the most common cause of infant mortality is birth defects. And many of those birth defects are genetic in their nature. And often but it's not common. The rates of infant mortality, even in the Bronx, where it's higher than the other four boroughs, is only 5 infant deaths per 1,000 live births. So that's 0.5%. So it's not ever common. The problem is that it's not as good as it could be.
Right. Now, how can parents receive education, basically when it comes to prenatal and postpartum care to reduce infant mortality?
Well, most programs for parents provide the educational process of what's to come during a pregnancy, what parents can do, what the mother and the father can be involved with, and other members of the family. One of the core programs that the Bronx Healthy Start Partnership provides is prenatal education and early parenting education for mothers and their partners. And that's often part of support groups and things like the centering pregnancy, where a group of pregnant women are brought together by healthcare providers, and they learn together as they all are expecting, and the opportunities they have of providing each other support is enhanced, and it's not just the health professionals or the family.
Now, can you talk about medical home for well women visits and well baby visits? This is the first time I'm, of course, hearing about this. But, what is this? And is this something accessible to people who are from lower income communities?
The medical home is the concept of primary and comprehensive care that everyone should have. And a woman who's thinking about having a baby or finds herself pregnant, it's important to have that source of primary care, and getting the prenatal care from a family physician or a midwife or an obstetrician. That's what obstetrics is about, is having a baby, or other primary care providers. And that medical home is supposed to be the coordinating site. And the community health centers in the Bronx and many of the hospital-based clinics do seek to provide that. And New York State has a special program for medical homes for people with any kind of chronic disease or mental health condition that puts them at greater risk for not getting good medical care.
Now, I understand there's something also called interconception care. Can you expand on what that is?
Well, interconception care is kind of a fancy word for everything between having children. And one of the things that we found over the years is that if you have your second child too soon after the first baby, you put that second child at greater risk for some of the problems that we've been talking about. So there is at least 18 months between the birth of one child and the conception of the next is ideal. But there's kind of a window that is about 18 months long, so up to 3 years apart. That's the ideal time to have a second child.
Well, Doctor, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. I learned a little bit more, and I know there's so much more to learn, but I want to appreciate you for taking the time to speak with us.
Well, I appreciate this is, as you mentioned at the beginning, this is Infant Mortality Prevention Month, and we want to make sure that every child has a chance to have that first birthday candle with their families.
All right. Thank you so much. To keep up with all the work that Einstein does, please go to their website at www.einsteinmed.com. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill? No. You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
Welcome back. Popular short-term rental sites like Airbnb and Vrbo have completely transformed the vacation planning experience. However, in cities like NYC, these platforms have become a hub for what many are calling illegal hotels. To address this issue, Local Law 18 mandates that hosts who rent out housing for less than 30 days must register before accepting any payment for bookings made through these platforms. Joining me to discuss the law is Chair of the WSNA's Illegal Hotel Committee, Tom Cayle. Tom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and I'm not spending the night.
Right, no, sure, we're not.
Nope.
Right.
20 of my best friends won't be here tonight having a party. We'll just have a conversation, and I'll go on my merry way.
Right. So I want to talk just about that, like Airbnb and Vrbo, as we mentioned. New York City law is requiring these booking platforms to register before they can begin collecting any money from rentals. Can you expand on this, and why is there even a need to register?
Okay, let me cover a couple of things for you. Local Law 18, which was actually passed on December 8th in 2021, became law in January of 2022. Doesn't in fact change any of the architecture of the existing state and city housing laws. All Local Law 18 does is require platforms and hosts to register with the city because they're doing business in the city. What we found in 2015, Santa Monica in California, they passed a similar law. And they required that the platforms and the hosts, once they carried out a financial transaction within their jurisdiction, then they had to be registered as a business in the municipality. Previous to that, Airbnb and the other platforms, they had claimed that they were immune from any kind of regulation because they said, well, we're just a platform. We're just providing, we're a publisher. So this is our First Amendment right. And the Communications Decency Act, which had been passed in 1998, gave platforms immunity for people using the platform and doing something or proposing something on the platform that was illegal. So the platforms all said, well, Communications Decency Act, you can't hold us responsible for hosts advertising and or carrying out rentals in the city, which are in fact against our law. Airbnb sued city of Santa Monica 3 times, lost 3 times. So when that happened, we realized, this is the direction that cities have to go. You can't advertise their right, you can't restrict their right to advertise. First Amendment. They can advertise anything they want. Okay. But once they enter into a financial transaction within the jurisdiction, then what business in New York City isn't regulated?
So it now becomes a business, and it's not necessarily like just Like some certain other sites will just be there for people to do whatever they have to do, but now it's considered a business, is what you're saying?
Oh, it's completely a business. Inviting people to come into your home and charging them for being there, that's a business. There's a financial transaction. This isn't home sharing. This isn't saying, hey, man, wow, we are so great. You have to come and stay in our place. And money, no, we're friends. I'm not charging you money. I'm cooking you blueberry pancakes. No. This is Airbnb is a business. They're a $30 billion, $40 billion business. They make money. They make money by having hosts rent space. That's a business. And again, there's not a business in New York City which isn't regulated except for drugs, prostitution, and counterfeit goods. So why shouldn't this business also be regulated?
Now, I want to talk about the term illegal hotels because
Sure.
now when we say that, it kind of brings like a different idea in our head. So can you just explain what are illegal hotels? And, if these short-term renters refuse to register, will their property fall under the idea of like an illegal hotel?
Oh, yeah. If what they're doing now is legal, then registering with the city, they'll continue to be legal. And what is a legal hotel in New York City is in an apartment house, in a building with 3 units or more. That building is regulated under the Multiple Dwelling Act. The Multiple Dwelling Law was passed in 1929. Almost 100 years ago. And the Multiple Dwelling Law says that you can't rent a Class A apartment, which is what most residential apartments are. You can't rent a Class A apartment for less than 30 days unless you are the primary leaseholder, you are on site, and then you can rent to a roomer or boarder for less than 30 days. But those are the requirements of multiple dwelling law, is that you have to be the primary leaseholder, you have to be on site. Then you have an extra bedroom, you rent it for tourists over a weekend or for less than 30 days. That's legal to do. So all 18 is doing is saying, fine, you're running that business, you're doing that, so now you just need to register with the city. But this also holds true for 1 and 2 family homes, too, that are in the outer boroughs. According to the building code and the housing maintenance code, those properties, 1 and 2 family homes, are exclusively for residential housing. Again, if you're in a 1 or 2 family home and you live in that unit and you have an extra bedroom, then you can rent it out. That is legal to do. What you can't do is take your second unit and rent it out exclusively as a transient property, so that you just have people coming in for less than 30 days. That's illegal, and it always has. LL 18 isn't changing that reality. It's only saying to the platforms and to the hosts, oh, by the way, you have to comply with New York City law, which Airbnb and the hosts have refused to do since, Airbnb went online in 2008. So they've just refused. The city's asked them repeatedly, said, please comply with our laws. And Airbnb has said, oh, no, we're not doing anything. We're just allowing people to rent their spaces.
Now, can you just expand? We talked about local law 18 a few times. Can you just explain what that is, but also why are these people against it? It seemingly seems like, oh, well, all you got to do is just one thing and you can go as normal. So why are people possibly against this?
Well, Airbnb is against it because last year, by breaking the law, the New York City market made them $85 million. So one thing you have to understand about illegal hotels and people renting out apartments or renting out 1 or 2 family homes illegally is this is cash on the hoof. It's unreported. It's untaxed. This is just money. Airbnb doesn't issue a 1099 until after a host reaches $20,000 a year from their property. But Airbnb also doesn't verify anybody's name or address or who they are. And in fact, in their SEC filing, they say This is their filing. This is they gave to the SEC when they filed for their IPO. They say we cannot guarantee the safety of our hosts, guests, and or third parties. We do not verify the identity of all of our hosts and guests, nor do we verify or screen for third parties which might be there. So Airbnb has no idea who their users are. So in terms of taxes, if you start to reach the $20,000 threshold for the year that you've made on one unit that you've rented out as an illegal hotel, well, all of a sudden your name isn't Bobby Bill anymore. Now your name's Billy Bob. And it starts all over again.
I also want to add that this could also go into the part where like how these illegal hotels hurt tenants and tourists. I know many people don't really read the small print when they agree to certain
They don't read the SEC filing?
People don't read it. And so can you
Shocking.
just expand on like how this is actually hurtful? Because I saw a news clip where people just think, oh, these small homeowners are just trying to, you know, make a quick dollar. Can you just expand on like maybe why that's not the case and how it may actually hurt tourists?
Well, but what you just said is the key to it. These small homeowners are just trying to make a quick dollar. This is all about just trying to make a quick buck. Airbnb and these other platforms realized that through the internet, there was a quick and easy way for them to hook up their hosts and their guests, and that they could make a percentage of that when that happened. So it's suddenly really attractive. So if you can go around, for instance, and rent 5, 6, 7, 8 different apartments, and they become part, and then you become a super host, right. And then you have these 8 apartments that you rent out serially. You don't live there; they're not yours. You're just renting the apartment, and then you charge above what your rent is on that apartment. So we've seen operators in New York City with as many as 156 units that they have been able to get control over. You go to a landlord and you say, how much is this studio? $2,000? I'll give you $2,500 for it. And now I'll turn around and I'll rent it for $200 a night. So I'll make $6,000 a month off of this apartment that I'm paying $2,500 for, and I'm paying $500 over what the landlord wants. Landlord's happy. Guests come. They write me great reviews. This is terrific. Okay, so now New Yorkers can't rent these apartments anymore. They're not available for New Yorkers. They're only available for tourists. I live in Hell's Kitchen. So we're just 2 blocks west of Times Square, the Theater District, Rockefeller Center. Hell's Kitchen was ground zero for illegal hotels back starting in 2004.
Right, yeah.
That's when our little organization started, was in 2004. And what we were hearing from neighbors was, how come every weekend, starting on Thursday night, there's 10 tourists staying in this 1-bedroom apartment? We've never had this before. The front door's open because they don't have enough keys for everybody, so they leave the door open. If they does get locked, they palm the buzzer. They buzz everybody in the building to get them back in again. Tourists are in New York to have a good time. God bless the tourists. We love the tourists.
Right. But it's an issue of safety for the people who live in the area, so I can imagine like why that is a huge concern.
Your basic security in New York City in an apartment building is you know your neighbors.
Right.
You know who your neighbors are. If you walk into your lobby, late at night, and there's people in the lobby you've never seen before, I would advise you get out of there.
Right.
You don't know who they are. You don't know what they're doing in the lobby. You've never seen them before. That is a recipe for getting hurt. So yeah, and then again, God bless the tourists. We love the tourists, but they're here to party.
Right.
They're here to have a good time. I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning so I can go to work.
Right.
So my schedule and their schedule are completely different, and it's incompatible to have tourists living in your residential building.
I want to say we are running out of time,
Okay.
but this is can you quickly let us know where can people go to actually educate themselves and learn more about this?
Oh, yeah. The best place to go to educate themselves is to the Office of Special Enforcement, which is one of the mayor's offices. It's actually the mayor's Office of Special Enforcement. And you can just Google it, Mayor's Office of Special Enforcement, NYC, and that will take you to their website. Their website explains the law, explains the registration, explains if you want to register, what it is that you have to do, and explains what are all the rules around registration, which are necessary, because basically what you're doing is you're registering to say, we agree to comply with the existing rules and laws in New York City.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And this story ain't over. It won't be over we've been dealing with it for 19 years, and it's going to go on because lots of people are really unhappy that they can't make an easy buck off of Airbnb anymore.
Right. So as mentioned, you can go to that website. But for now, we have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug, you know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for you. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at this segment with Jonathan Ramirez, the Principal Success Advisor at Bottom Line, where we discuss the organization's mission to support equity in higher education, tackle issues like student debt, and work towards increasing graduation rates among lower income students. So can you tell us a little bit more about Bottom Line and the work that your organization does?
Yes, so we are a nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1997 in Boston, but since then, of course, we've expanded to New York and to Chicago with more regions incoming, including a virtual advising team that we are setting up in Ohio as well. And the main focus of our work is focusing on one-on-one direct student partnerships and services in order to connect them to the vital resources and activities needed to graduate college, first off to enter college through our college access program, and then also to get through college and to pursue the career of their choice through our success program, which I'm a part of.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned there's two aspects of this and it's entering college, but also graduating, which is a huge part. Can you talk about why there was an effort, in regard to that, to focus on racial equity and just basically focusing on students of color?
So as a data-driven organization, we have seen that there are tremendous gaps in college persistence and in college graduation, particularly amongst our student population that we work with, which are primarily first generation or first in family college students who are students of color from high need backgrounds. So we notice that there are tremendous gaps in college persistence and graduation in those groups. So the reason why we're here, the reason why we exist is because we're looking to close those gaps. We're looking to have these students also be successful in what they want to do, in what the careers that they want to pursue.
Now, what are some challenges students of color face in regard to higher education?
Particularly from a socioeconomic standpoint, it could be they are inherently in a place where there are difficulties from a financial standpoint, from a social standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. But purely, one thing I would like to highlight would be the sense of imposter syndrome that a lot of our students face, which is the sense of believing that they don't belong, that why do I deserve to be here? And that is one of the things that I know all of my team are looking to tackle, to eliminate in our students as much as we can, to let them know that despite maybe looking different from their peers or feeling different from their peers or coming from different backgrounds from other individuals who may be already successful in the careers that they want to choose, they have the skill set. They can have the confidence, they can have the drive to then also succeed in those very same fields. So that's what we strive to really drill into our students as much as we can, to let them know, hey, you belong here. You are also ready to be successful here.
Now, I'm glad that you brought up imposter syndrome. It's something that everybody experiences at some point. And I know that in regards to higher education, it feels like people are trying to get more students to feel that way. That kind of leads me to my next question. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding affirmative action. Can you just talk about how that how those changes towards affirmative action affect some of the work your organization does with getting more students into college and eventually graduating from college?
So unfortunately, we do see that the recent Supreme Court decision on affirmative action has led to creating an additional barrier for our students, quite frankly. Creating this sense of knowing that there's now a perceived lesser amount of opportunity for our students to then be able to get into the colleges that they so choose. So we see this as an opportunity to redouble our efforts and to focus even more on providing our students with all of the resources necessary, and also providing them with all of the confidence that they can have in order to then realize, we can see this as an additional barrier, as an additional roadblock, but that doesn't mean that you cannot get into the schools that you want. There's still every opportunity in the world for you to get into the school that you would like to get into. It's just a matter of course, putting in the work, but also, letting them know who you are, every element of who you are. And that would be exactly what is needed in order for you to get in.
Now, can you talk about your professional advisors and why their guidance is so important for these students?
So my colleagues, the wonderful advisors in Bottom Line, in both the Access and Success team, we come from various backgrounds ourselves. We come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different schools, different areas of New York, and even beyond New York. So with that, there comes different pools of knowledge and different perspectives that we can all put in together. And that really serves our students quite well, because our students all come from different backgrounds, right? Myself and a few of my colleagues, we all come from CUNY. Shout out to CUNY, of course. But then we also have colleagues who graduated from the SUNY system in various degrees, colleagues who came from private schools, and even schools outside of New York. So that also directly fits with our student body. We do serve a vast majority of students in the CUNY system, but we also have students in the SUNY system, in private schools, and of course, students who may want to leave New York or be in schools around New York. So to have that pool of knowledge from our colleagues, to know different perspectives, different school systems, different ways in which schools operate, that of course proves valuable in working with the students that we serve, because then they are also in these environments. So no matter which environment our students may choose, there are then advisors that can say, hey, I've been there too. I know what that's about as well. Let me help you through this. So to have those different perspectives all coming together has been proven to be extremely valuable.
And also, how does that guidance, possibly help many of these students basically prevent them from facing the student debt crisis?
So a lot of the work, particularly in our Access program, but also, of course, going through our Success program, a lot of that work also stems from making sure the choices that our students make are sensible, not only in terms of what they want to study, but also in terms of the financial implications of each school. We know, of course, that college can be extremely expensive, right? Mm-hmm. But there are different schools that can offer different types of financial aid packages, whether in terms of offering scholarships, being a part of scholar programs, being a part of programs such as SEEK for CUNY or EOP or HEOP. So really what we want students to do is to ensure that they are making the best possible decision for themselves, not only in terms of their academics, but in terms of their finances as well, as there are many schools that offer reduced tuition rates, and also being able to offer even refunds in terms of tuition rates and the financial aid application that they have. So, we want to make sure that, yes, this could be the right school for you, not just in terms of their academics, but also in terms of, okay, we are having a strong financial aid package, which means you may not even pay anything to be here, which of course would be the best possible scenario.
Right. Now, I want to talk about, it's hard to believe, but it has been nearly 3 years, or it has been 3 years since the pandemic, which means that a lot of college students now, or people entering college, have had their high school education affected by the pandemic. Can you just talk about that experience for a lot of these young people who are now entering college? How has that affected them in higher education?
As we know, the pandemic affected every single industry. It really put all of us in a standstill, it seems. And organizationally, we shifted into a fully online model throughout the height of the pandemic. And that really also, unfortunately, exposed a lot of the gaps that our students had primarily already faced, which included then access to technology, access even to adequate space in order to study, because, a lot of these schools were closed, and including social spaces were closed as well, including libraries. And, a lot of students live with family members. Some of them may live with many family members. So it could be difficult for them to even find a quiet place to study, to focus on their work. So unfortunately, the pandemic did expose a lot of these additional gaps that we then, as an organization, work tirelessly to navigate and to help our students navigate through in regards to making sure that they have the adequate space to study, making sure that they have access to all the resources that the schools themselves can then help provide in terms of ensuring student success as best as possible through the pandemic. And now that we are in our third year and trying to move forward from COVID, now we've adopted more of a hybrid model. So we are returning back to seeing students in person as much as we can. And we are then seeing that students are now appreciating the fact that being in person can really be a very positive experience.
I think a lot of people are now appreciating that fact. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Can you just talk about, how could supporting equity in college graduation actually benefit not only the student, but New York City on a larger scale?
So speaking purely from an economic perspective, if we really think about it, getting a college degree, of course, means potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in terms of additional income for students, right? For students who then become members of the workforce. This can mean future doctors, future lawyers, future teachers, future artists, future entertainers, what have you. Getting this pathway through college then means that they can acquire or have a pathway to then acquire the tools, the confidence, as I mentioned, the experience, the perspectives, the networks then necessary to then be able to acquire the career that they so choose, whether it be to be a part of the workforce or to open up their own business, to be an entrepreneur, things of that nature. Being a member of that college pathway, graduating from college, can then provide those additional opportunities to then be a member of that workforce, which from an economic perspective can then mean huge boons to us, to the city, to then see, who else can contribute to the economy.
Now, so I want to basically talk about, once they are in the workforce, can you talk about the importance of making sure these students or these people find a place where they have a sense of community? And can you just quickly tell us that, because we have about a minute left, but I definitely want to get that in there.
Oh, sure, yes. So from a virtual standpoint, we have developed an online system called Bottom Line Connect, which we like to refer to as a LinkedIn application, but purely for our students. So from a virtual standpoint, we connect our students through Bottom Line Connect with professionals in our partner industries that we work with, but also to each other. So then allow them to be able to work together, talk with each other about their experiences, to help them see like, hey, I'm going through this, you're going through that, let's talk, let's see what this is about. And then to potentially help each other and to be each other's network. That in addition to all the resources that their individual colleges then provide, and then being able to have direct partnerships with other organizations, with other industries that can then provide internships, volunteering opportunities with our students. All of those can really lead to having more of a cohort, particularly amongst our students.
Well, Jonathan, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
If you or someone you know would like to learn more about Bottom Line, please go to their website at www.bottomline.com. Don't go away. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
We all know what it's like to feel alone. But it just takes one new connection.
Want to get out of here?
To empower many.
This is unbelievable.
It doesn't take a superhero to bring forces together. We all have the power to reach out.
Let's go!
And help someone feel like they belong.
Pretty cool, huh?
We are stronger together.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good they can't ignore you.
My magic is
Analytics and empathy. That's how I'm getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I am more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. Stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Welcome back. Emmy Award-winning producer and director Paul A. Notice II joins me to discuss their short film, Willow, State of Emergency. The film follows an elected alt-world observer known as Griot and her world as she ascends to power in an Afrocentric, vampiric world on the verge of collapse. Before we delve into the film and the upcoming series, let's watch the trailer.
Why hasn't it happened yet? There hasn't been a day that I haven't in some way asked myself that same question. How many more successful projects need to be seen by how many more of the right kind of people? When you see others have it for far less work and far less questions, you start to ask yourself, why am I not there yet? Maybe you'll never be. What then? What then?
Once again, we're joined by producer and director Paul A. Notice II. Paul, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I want to jump right into it. Can you tell us about the short film, Willow, State of Emergency? And when did you realize that this was actually a story that you wanted to tell?
That's a great question. So Willow, State of Emergency, it's a glimpse to a larger world of a TV series that I'm producing with my production company called Willow House of Griots. And it quintessentially follows a woman who is charged with creating laws. So imagine her as like a US representative, but she's able to look in different realities and kind of predict whether or not these laws will work. And in the midst of that, she has an idea that she believes will ultimately save the world that she's living in, and yet she keeps getting ignored. And so the story picks up where she kind of has that all come to a head the night that she confronts her boss in this predictive gambling game that all the griots, as they're called, basically play, where they try to predict, okay, this is going to happen in the next 5 minutes, this is going to happen in the next 5 minutes. And of course, like, there's consequences to her actions during that game. I don't want to give away too many spoilers.
Right.
But, yeah.
And when did you realize this was something that you wanted to tell? Because this is like an entire world, as we mentioned. It's not like, oh, I was inspired. Well, you could have been inspired by things in your life, but it's not like a biography or anything. This is like you created this world. So what inspired that?
This actually 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. This originated as a stage play, and what pushed me to make it then was both like a love of August Wilson plays and Susie Louis Parks and Adrian Kennedy, but also a realization that there weren't a lot of roles for Black women in abstract spaces. And it kind of bothered me, right? Even just considering the Bechdel test, I just saw that in a lot of sci-fi and fantasy fiction that's on screen. It just didn't exist. And so I set about creating first a stage play, because I saw that didn't happen a lot in theater. And around 2020, even though a lot of people throughout the course of that stage plays production and readings and workshops, they always said that it should probably be a larger TV series. I think 2020 was kind of like the kickstart of me wanting to push that into reality. So we started shooting in the fall, and I think that really was because of the Trump presidency and how this type of disregard for actual history and kind of relegating it to, well, this is just woke history, right? And we can even see that now, Ron DeSantis trying to basically erase Black history, but Black history is our history. It's what makes the United States. And I think that really is what informed me to create this larger world that was based off of just a few key moments in history that go about differently. The 1811 German Coast Response, or no, to start that over again, the 1811 German Coast Revolt was the largest slave revolt in North America. And it could have very easily led to Black people or free Black people owning the means and freeing themselves in what was then called the state of Orleans, it's 1811. So I basically followed that just idea, like what would that look like, what would that be? And the stage play itself really was just about what happens if you live in a world where everyone feeds on each other, right, to survive. How do we actually rectify that? And it really was just this deconstruction of capitalism. I feel like it's something that kind of reinforces the expectation of the other. And so, how can I make that in real terms? Something that we can kind of investigate and deconstruct. So in the midst of me creating that larger world in 2020, that's where I came up with the idea of, okay, well, this is an alternate reality where, all right, maybe it's a different genre of vampires. And since I want to kind of show Black folks, Indigenous folks running the means of production and actually creating their own world, what if the 1811 slave revolt was successful? And it kind of just goes from there.
And I wanted to, what was the challenge, behind like being inspired by real world events, but also putting that like supernatural sci-fi spin on that? And did you feel any responsibility, like when you were kind of like merging the two, just given what we're, dealing with history and people like rewriting history? Did you have any, did you feel like anything when you were doing that?
It was less of a burden or feeling of responsibility, but more of a catharsis. These are things, most of these stories are stories that they're from our communities. They give us empowerment and value. They kind of open our world, our eyes, or they open up our perspective to a larger understanding of what the world could be. One of the big things that I want to do, which is based off of all my interviews as a journalist with Man Up, violence interrupting programs, alternative incarceration programs, was to create an alternative to policing, actually show that on screen. It's healing. Like when I'm writing these certain scenes and showing what liberal policies or progressive policies or policies that are community driven actually could look like if we invested in them, it's a healing thing. It's a bit of catharsis to say, well, look, this is what it could look like. And you don't see that at all on TV. I feel like it's always a tone deaf response. Even, something as simple as Black Lives Matter. That's a very simple, basic thing. And for, I don't know, some movies to still get that wrong. So I think it's more of a healing process, really, to even create that type of world that we want to see.
Now, can you talk about House of Griots and how that expands on the world built in Willow?
Yes. So with Willow, it's just that microcosm of only Willow and her animosity towards her boss, Shaka. And with House of Griots, we pull back that scope to see, one, how the America that she lives in came to exist. So we start literally in 1810, right before the revolt starts, and we follow the leader of that revolt all the way up to the creation of a new country. And then we also jump into different multiverses because it's a multiverse thriller. So getting to explore the different realities along with Moja 1, which is Willow's world, and even introducing a character who literally comes from our reality, called Mark Aware, which is obviously just my name in a different way. But it basically it expands the world and the world building in a way that kind of tells you, okay, this is where all this came from. I think it's a really fun, exciting trip or journey just to kind of see all of that unfurl, and then what different choices each character takes to kind of make to navigate this world that is on the verge of collapse. How are they going to save it? Yeah.
So what emotion or thought do you want to evoke in your audience when they interact or just become a part of this world?
I remember looking at that question before. It really made me think, because I never thought of that. I never thought of it that way. I always the main thing I wanted was a sense of catharsis to see our stories told, because a big intention that I did was not just to make it Afrocentric, but to make it inclusive and to center Black women and femmes and queer folks, and to actually weave that into the story. I didn't just want them to be, cursor characters or characters that are like a side character. I wanted full three-dimensional things because we want to see that. And I think it's more than just representation. I think it's just truth, right? So I guess in terms of the feelings I would want the audience to feel, I mean, anything that you would feel when you discover something new about yourself and about the people around you. Anything that you feel when you have that moment of catharsis, of seeing finally, like, this is a logical step and this actually makes sense. And, I don't just see myself there, but I see the characters that are representing, who I could be, making logical choices on screen. And still, it's a thriller. I don't know if they're going to make it or not, right?
And it's a fantasy sci-fi, which, I think for a lot of Black people in America, or maybe just globally, sometimes we still struggle in that area of film.
Yeah.
And so I could see how that would be exciting, even for you to just create.
Yeah. I mean, you can even see in the trailer, they use tribal markings, and there's head wraps there, and it's normalized, right? So, using these certain things, if you watch the film, you'll notice Sacha Obama has an African accent. If you notice in a lot of sci-fi genre films, they have a British accent if they're really highfalutin and highbrow, if they're from a higher status. So my answer to that was to create all the people who are of high stature to have African accents. I think just having a different route where it's coming from a way of celebrating who we are, and at the same time interrogating new forms of liberation, right? I think that was really key. And I don't know, I think it's I guess joy would be something that I would want someone to feel when they watch this, right. Apart from actually, the different roller coaster of emotions you'll see watching Willow kind of navigate through everything. Joy. Definitely.
Now, what can people do to further support the film, and what can they look forward to when it comes to the series?
Sure. So I think two things. Obviously, find it on Amazon. The short film's being released on Amazon this month. So definitely look for it for near the end of the month. And we have a fundraiser party. I'm not sure if we can mention it. Can we say fundraiser?
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a fundraiser party coming up Saturday, November 4th. And so I would say go to our website and stay updated on that. We'll be sending out a location at the end of the week. But those would be the best ways. We also, if you go to the website, you'll find ways to support us. And also just different events that are happening around the city throughout the year.
Well, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really interesting conversation. I wish it was longer, but so far what we talked about was amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
To learn more about Willow, please go to the website www.thenoticeblog.com//Willow. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you miss any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kibin Alleyne, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.